Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get this Historic Architectural Review Board meeting started for Monday, May 6th. We apologize for the delay, but we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. The first thing I'd like to do is call for approval of the agenda as it was published.
So
I have a motion from Naeem. Second from Donald. Any comments, questions on the motion of the board from the board? Any comments, questions on the motion on the floor from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Let's go ahead and do our Pledge of Allegiance now. Ms. Janine, right there at the mic, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay, and I keep the comma out like it's written. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You see, I caught that. I knew where you were headed. Okay, so we'll start with our presentation. First presentation is an overview of the Florida Commission on Ethics Form 1 Financial Disclosure and Sunshine Law Requirements.
Can you click on the right side?
And Ms. Janine, you're going to take us through that. You got the fun stuff tonight.
I got the fun stuff tonight. And there have been quite a lot of discussions about public records around the city of Newberry recently, so I'm sure you're all aware. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about Florida Sunshine Laws, just to make sure you're all aware that as HARB members and as PZ members, you are under the Florida Sunshine Law. And it says, all meetings of any collegial public body of a county, municipality, school district, or special district at which official acts are to be taken or which public business of such body is to be transacted or discussed shall be open and noticed to the public. We have to provide notices to the public there's going to be a meeting, except with respect to meetings exempted pursuant to this section or specifically closed by this Constitution, which probably wouldn't happen with these two boards. The three basic requirements of the statute are that meetings of public boards or commissions must be open to the public, reasonable notice of such meeting must be given, and minutes of the meetings must be taken and promptly recorded. A meeting occurs when there is any gathering, whether formal or casual, of two or more members of the same board. So if two of you are going to the same event and you know it, that's a meeting, and you need to tell the secretary of the planning or the HARB board to notice it, unless you're going to not talk to each other. I'm not an attorney, but I'm trying to keep you out of trouble. So if two or more members of the same board or commission are going to discuss some matter in which foreseeable action will be taken by the board or commission. A gathering may include meetings of board or commission members via telephone or other electronic means. It doesn't actually have to be in person. Why? Every thought, as well as every affirmative act of a public official as it relates to and is within the scope of his or her official duties, is a matter of public concern. And the public should, to the extent possible, have access to the entire decision-making process from start to finish, including initial inquiries and deliberation. What kind of documents are covered? I'm not going to go over the list, but emails, text messages, Facebook posts, all of that are public records. And we were discussing it before the meeting officially started in relation to another request that was made. What happens is we, the city clerk's office, will receive a public records request, and we will come to the board members and we will say, we need all your personal transactions that discuss this address, this word, that include this word, that kind of thing. And it is up to you to provide them to us or to the Secretary of the Planning and Zoning and HARB Board. And it is your liability if it's later proven you didn't give them all to us. Make sense? Okay, trying to keep you out of trouble. But, just because you text on your personal phone doesn't mean it's private. Okay? The liaison rule. Generally, individual board members may call upon staff members for factual information and advice without being subject to the Sunshine Law. However, if staff members are not members of the collegial board. However, the Sunshine Law applies if a board member begins to use a staff member as an alternative or as an intermediary or go-between, such that the board members are essentially discussing matters behind the public's eye. Does that make sense? So each of you can call and ask staff the same exact question about the application. But you can't say, hey, can you tell this board member, da-da-da-da-da, I feel this way about it, that kind of thing. The public has the right to participate. Members of the public must be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or on a proposition before a board or commission. The opportunity to be heard need not occur at the same meeting at which the board takes official action. If the opportunity occurs at a meeting that is during the decision-making process and occurs within reasonable proximity in time before the meeting at which the board takes the official action. Don't know if you heard about the action in the county next to us that's getting sued, but I personally think this applies there. They took public comment at one commission meeting, and they voted at the next commission meeting refusing to take public comment. But they said we took public comment for 5 hours at the last meeting. So I think I'm not an attorney again. So the statute does not prohibit the board from maintaining standards of conduct and decorum. Make sense? There are penalties and sanctions for violating the Sunshine Law. Unintentional violations, you didn't mean to do it, but you just did it. So ignorance of the law is no excuse. Those can be punishable by a fine up to $500. Knowing violations, you violated knowing you were violating, are second-degree misdemeanors punishable by a fine of not more than $500 and a jail term of not more than 60 days. Suspension or removal from office, a board member may be suspended or removed from your office for the commission of a felony or misdemeanor, and attorney fees and court costs may be awarded at both the trial and appellate level if a violation is found. Just don't do it. Every person has the right to inspect or copy any public record, just so you know. The legislative mandate, it's the policy of this state that all state, county, and municipal records are open for personal inspection and copying by any person. They don't have to give us a name, they don't have to give us a reason, they don't have to do anything, except for maybe if it's going to exceed the statutory limits, we can charge them for the public records. Public record is all documents, papers, letters, maps, books, tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, data processing software, or other material, regardless of the physical form, characteristic, or means of transmission, made or received pursuant to a law or ordinance or in connection with the transaction of official business by any agency. I'm going to switch to the Form 1, but any questions on Sunshine Law? Just keep it all in the sunshine, bright and shiny. Form 1 background. All members of the Historic Architectural Review Board and the Planning and Zoning Board are required to file a Form 1 Statement of Financial Interest annually prior to July 1st. There is also a requirement to file financial disclosure shortly after being appointed or leaving those positions. Those serving as of December 31st, 2023, file a 2023 Form 1. You're filing it as your status as of December 31st, 2023. So it's the 2023 form. Financial disclosure forms will be filed electronically this year via the Commission on Ethics Electronic Financial Disclosure Management System. I think you all got actually the email link in there. I say that they said they were going to, or maybe it was in the staff report, that they said they were going to email the links out last week, and I think they actually did. The Florida Commission on Ethics is absolutely wonderful about answering the phone and answering your questions. I've given you their hours are 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, their 850 number, and their website. But they're just absolutely wonderful. The filing deadline is no later than July 1st. Do it early. Then we won't have to nag you. Reminders were emailed last week. If the annual form is not submitted via the electronic filing system, by September 1st, 2024, an automatic fine of $25 every day will be imposed up to a maximum of $1,500. Failure to file can also result in removal from public office or employment. And so that means even if you're not employed here, if you're employed for another municipal agency, you could be fired. In addition, failure to make any required disclosure constitutes grounds for and may be punished by one or more of the following: disqualification from being on the ballot, impeachment, removal, or suspension from office, demotion, reduction in salary. Yeah, you guys get paid so much. Reprimand or a civil penalty not exceeding $10,000. Actually, you don't get paid anything for being on the HARB. You get paid for being on the PC. Little bit. Does that all make sense? Just don't be late and file. It's a public record. It's required by law. They advise you not put your social security number, your bank account, your debit, charge, and credit card numbers, mortgage or brokerage account numbers, any personal identification number or taxpayer identification number on the form. Not as applicable when you're filing the Form 1, but you can attach your tax return. But if you do that, make sure you black out all that kind of information before you attach it. Okay? But like on the Form 1, you really don't have to do that. We are not talking the Form 6. If you qualify to have your Form 1 not a public record because of a current or former position, you have to fill out their form. I've got it right here. I can notarize it. And it has to be submitted by mail. It cannot be emailed. And it has to be received before you electronically file your Form 1, so that they already have you coded to hide your form when you submit it. Okay? And the kind of things are HR officers, police officers, code enforcement officers, judges, that kind of thing. There's a long list. If you're curious, you can have a copy. Does that all make sense? Mm-hmm. This is what the website looks like. You go to that far left button with the blue that says, I am a filer. You put in your username, which is the email we use to contact you for the Harbin PZ. If you need a different email used, let Judy or I know in the city clerk's office, because we can log in the background. It'll take a day, we can put it in, but then the next day you'd be able to use that email to log in. You will get a link that gives you a default password and asks you to set up your password. Do that pretty quickly. Keep that. You will have to use the same username and password for the rest of the time you are required to file a financial disclosure form, whether that's a Form 1 or Form 6, okay? Note the Form 1 must be completed by either you, the filer's CPA, or the filer's attorney. The city attorney and the city clerk cannot assist with the Form 1 filing. You can email a link to your CPA or attorney, but once you do that, it becomes read-only for you, and the CPA or attorney can finish the form, sign the form, and then return it to you for review and signature. The filer cannot change the data input by the CPA or attorney. You can return it to your CPA or attorney for changes. It's really not that hard, though. This is page 1. I put them in your document. Don't know where the other pages went. Primary sources of income. You disclose your primary sources of income during 2023. This is where you list anything that you did that paid you $2,500 of gross income, gross, before taxes and everything, received in your own name or by any other person for your use or benefit. And there's a right-hand side, you can click and ask for information, and it'll pop up and tell you. Oh, that's where it is, page 2. Secondary sources of income. Secondary sources of income are businesses in which you own an interest. They are not your second jobs. Those would still go under primary income. Okay? A secondary income is if you own more than 5% of the business, if the income you get from that business is more than $5,000, and if the client or customer contributed greater than 10% of the business's gross income. And what you do is you put the business's name, the client that contributed more than 10% of the business's gross income's name and address, and that client's business description. So you're a landlord, you own 3 units. You made more than $5,000 on each of those 3 units last year. You list your 3 tenants. Okay? You disclose businesses in which you own an interest. I did that. That must have been reported. You are not required under the real property section to list your residences. We all know you got 3 or 4 houses. You don't list them. You list any vacation homes you derive income from. You list the location and description of all real property in Florida in which you own it directly or indirectly at any time during 2023, and you owned more than 5% of the property's value. Intangible personal property, it's a long list. And basically, I put that whole list there. There was a lot of concern on the Form 6 about, what do we have to put as intangibles? And a lot of things you can lump together. But in 2023, your intangibles are anything that was worth more than $10,000 to you, and you were using it as an investment, like cash on hand, stocks, bonds, certificates of deposits, vehicle leases, interest in businesses, that kind of thing. Loans made as a candidate to your own campaign, I don't think that applies. Your drop account, the Florida prepaid college plan, bank accounts, anything more than $10,000. Intangible personal property also includes investment products held in IRAs, brokerages, accounts, and the Florida College Investment Plan. And that's where you list, like if I was doing a Form 1, I would not say I have an Edward Jones account worth more than $10,000. I would list the actual funds in my Edward Jones account by their official names, like Vanguard, High Risk, blah, blah, blah. Make sense? Yes.
So if that's the case, would it be that the total account is $10,000, but since each fund is separate, would we have to wait until that fund actually makes it to 10,000? So, for example, if I have 5 stocks and they're all worth $2,000 a piece, technically that's not a $10,000 threshold per stock, so wouldn't that just count as 2,000?
Like if my Vanguard was 2,000
Right.
and my Dow Jones Index Fund was 2,000.
That's why I kept it simple.
But they didn't cross 10,000.
Right, those individuals did not cross 10,000, so technically, together they're 10 grand, but since we're listing them individually, and those are $2,000 a piece, would it be necessary to put those in there?
Or do you want me to call ethics and email the
I
answer?
think that might be an
Okay.
ethics question.
Sorry, I don't mean
No,
to throw.
it's a good question. I'll call ethics tomorrow and I'll email all of you the answer.
Because if someone has 100 grand in stocks, but there's
40 accounts or
1,000
80, yeah.
accounts that you have them all split up in, does it even matter at that point?
right, I will ask that. Automobiles and houses you own, jewelry and paintings are not intangible property. Property owned as tenants by the entirety or as joint tenants with the right of partnership, including bank accounts owned in such matter, should be reported at 100%. So if you have a joint bank account with your wife and it has over $10,000 in it, you have to report that bank because either of you could get 100% of it. Liabilities. You list the name and address of each creditor to whom you owe more than $10,000 at any point during the disclosure period. You're not required to list the amount of the debt. You really don't list amounts anywhere on the form. It's just, is it over this threshold or under? You don't have to disclose credit card and retail installment account debt, taxes owed unless it was reduced to a judgment, indebtedness on a life insurance policy owed to the company of issuance, or contingent liabilities. A contingent liability is one that will become an actual liability only when one or more future events occur or fail to occur, such as where you're liable only as a guarantor, surety, or endorser on a promissory note. If you're a co-maker and are jointly liable or jointly and severably liable, it is not a contingent liability. Interest in specified businesses. This disclosure includes, you have to reveal if you own an interest in any state or federally chartered bank, state or federal savings and loan association, a cemetery company, an insurance company, a mortgage company, credit union, small loan companies, alcoholic beverage licenses, pari-mutuel wagering companies, utility companies, entities controlled by the Public Service Commission, and entities granted a franchise to operate by either a city or a county government. You have to disclose that in 2023 you owned an interest or held any certain position with that type of business listed above. Did you hear that? List any certain position within that type of business listed below. You must make this disclosure if you own or owned either directly or indirectly in the form of an equitable or beneficial interest at any time during 2023 more than 5% of the total assets of capital stock of one of these types of businesses listed above. You must also complete this part of the form for each of those types of businesses for which you are or were at any time during 2023 an officer, director, partner, proprietor, or agent, other than a resident agent solely for the service of process. That's where you sign it, real hard. And you electronically sign it, and then you get a pop-up thanking you that it'll be filled. So any questions on the Form 1? I'm going to do it by July 1st. I know you've already done it, and you've already done it, and you did a Form 6. But we cannot give you real advice on how to fill it out, but if it's your first time and you're like wandering around, call Ethics. They're great. They're awesome. They really are. And I don't say that about a lot of other government agencies.
Very ethical people. Yes.
Okay.
Any questions? All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Neem. Great job. Okay, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published.
So moved.
I have a motion from Board Member Naeem. All those, I need a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Melinda. Melina, any, nope, no comments, questions on that. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. I'm sorry, someone ran into my Jeep outside, so I'm flustered,
What?
working on back and forth over there. I know, parked in the road too. That's my favorite Jeep, my only Jeep. But, yeah, all right. All right.
The deal was?
That's what the deal was out there, yes. Yeah, they're out there. They're dealing with it. My wife's handling it. It's very good to have a spouse. Okay, that moves us to public hearings and ordinances, Historic Preservation Month proclamation. And John Paul, you're going to take us through that? I don't seem to have the actual proclamation.
No, tonight we're just seeking a recommendation
Oh,
from
for
the,
proclamation. Okay.
yep, to pass on to the City
To the
Commission,
Commission.
and then it'll be read at the first City Commission hearing in May. So Historic Preservation Month is the month of May. It is something that was initiated by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. They've been running the same theme for the past several years, which is people saving places, because without people, places really have no meaning, and we make those places, we save those places, and we make them important, and they're important to us. So they're going to probably continue that theme, so you'll continue seeing that. If the Historic Preservation Board would like a different theme to be represented in the proclamation, because this will recur annually, we can make that happen. So if we wanted to diversify what we're honoring for the month of May, we can do so. All right. And in the presentation are just some historical photos of the city of Newberry from the State Library. Pretty impressive stuff. No, it's from the State Library of Florida, not South Carolina. Yeah. All right. And, some of the properties that were surveyed during the last survey that was done for historical places, and some of the events that are important to the city. And tonight we're just asking for a motion to recommend to the City Commission to proclaim May as Historic Preservation Month in the city of Newberry.
Any questions, comments, thoughts? Do I have that motion?
Motion moved.
I have a motion from Board Member Long,
Second.
second from Board Member Urchin. Any comments or questions from the board on the motion on the floor? Public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and that will move us to topics from members for discussion.
I have an announcement.
All right.
May 18th is the Newberry Watermelon Festival, and we want to see as many people out there as possible, and there will be a pet pageant that me and Naeem are running, so we hope to see as many pets out there as possible, at least the well-behaved ones, please.
Yes.
Dress them up, bring them out, we're excited, doesn't matter, they don't have to be a dog necessarily, so.
Wonderful. Board Member Willis, you got anything you want to announce? No? Board Member Long? No. Board Member Urchin, you got anything? One thing? Nothing? Okay.
I'll leave that to you, Ray.
All right. Well, I just wanted to announce, we'll announce it again at the P&Z just in case people aren't zooming in on both of them or tuning in on both of them. But we did get word from the Department of Education today. Newberry Elementary School has converted. So it will be the first community school in Newberry. We look forward to working with the school board and working with the community to make it the best elementary school that it can be. So very excited for those parents who worked so hard and brought forth such a bold plan to help make some improvements and address some of the concerns that everybody during the campaign on all sides agree exist. So very excited about that. And any public comments? Come on down.
Janine Miranak, Can you give us an update on the Newberry Historical Association?
I can give you that update. And if you, I'm going to read this off so I'm making sure I get it right. So if you didn't email me back, still time for you to join, but we are going to meet. Okay, I'm going to look for a different place. On May 14th, May 14th, Tuesday, Little Red Schoolhouse, 7 p.m. will be our first inaugural meeting where we will get together. So if you want to be a part of that, Marlo, JH at newberryfl.gov, send me, I'll send you the invitation. Looking forward to that a lot. Lots of work to do on that front as well. Thank you, Ms. Janine, I appreciate that. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we are adjourned. All right, stay tuned for the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, which will start
Mayor Marlowe, what was the last part of your email address?
newberryfl.gov. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call this regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Board meeting to order. First off, start with approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Naeem.
A second.
Second from Donald. Any comments or questions on the motion from the board?
I was gonna say, you just need to make an announcement about our missing board members.
Public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? All right, we will recognize that Board Member Polo and Thomas are not with us tonight, but we do have a quorum, so we're going to move on. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We already said the pledge for the last one, so we're going to move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published?
So moved.
I have a motion from Naeem.
Second.
Second from Donald. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. That will bring us to the only item on tonight's agenda is preliminary plat for Highland Park, FKA Newberry Plaza for all resident phases. I'm going to start by asking Attorney if you please would read Resolution 2024-17/SD2407 into the record.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. You did, you caught me. Caught me slacking. This is Resolution 2024-17, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving a preliminary plat consisting of 130 acres, more or less, as authorized under Section 516 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations and a Plan Development PD known as Highland Park, FKA Newberry Plaza, on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. John Paul, you going to take us through this? John Paul, you going to take us through this? Just make sure the microphone is on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is for a preliminary plat. The project was previously known as Newberry Plaza. They've since rebranded the project to be called Highland Park. There are a few requests that are moving forward around this project. Right now, we're looking at a preliminary plat for just the residential phases within the overall plan development. And the consultant or agent on this request is CHW. They're continuing with the same design firm. Property is now transferred over to the new LLC, so it's now Newberry Plaza LLC that's owner. And just want to go over some of the timelines. So it's actually August 14th, 2023. They got entitlements for the land use and zoning through ordinance 2023-16. January 18th, they submitted the civil drawings for the non-residential, the commercial portions. That was a big topic of discussion for the Planning and Zoning Board as well as the City Commission. So I just want to let you know that those plans came in first. We've been reviewing them, we're actively reviewing them, and we'll hopefully have them on an agenda coming soon. So May 13th is the target. A few things that we need to nail down, but that's the goal. And then the preliminary plat was actually submitted on March 25th, and we're here today considering at the Planning and Zoning Board. If recommended for approval or denial, it'll go to the City Commission, and that date will likely be May 27th. So this is a image of the parcel within the city future land use map, or I'm sorry, zoning map you can see here, plan development. And this is the original phasing plan that was approved with the land development regulations or the rezoning application. You can see in the blue is all of the residential is broken up into 7 different phases. That has since changed to be just 2 phases. Same number of parcels or detached homes that will be there. Developable lots stay at 350, so it's just split into 2 phases. In the planning documents on the actual plat, it'll just be 350 lots in the rear. And this are some of the images zoomed in to the layout of the preliminary plat. There you can see the gray residence is cut out of it. You had a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, what was the reason to go from 7 to 2 phases?
So the developer that brought it forward is actually a commercial developer. They don't do residential, and so I would have to probably rely on Ryan Thompson, who's here, to maybe tell why it was split, but it may be for the reason of attracting a national developer that may not take on residential developments that are less than a certain number.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's finish yours, and then we'll revisit that question, unless you wanted
To clarify, John Paul, real quick, just so our board is aware, this discussion today is the actual plan development of the residentials, correct?
Yes, for the preliminary plat.
So we can discuss like the road situation inside the plat. We can
Yes.
talk about the house situation inside the plat. I'm just, because sometimes a lot of people that are watching on YouTube or the city channel get confused on what's actually being able to be discussed today.
Yes,
So today is the actual discussion of the plat itself and the layout.
correct.
Okay.
And for those that may not be aware, plat is just a map or a boundary map of the property. There are some other things that a plat will do, like establish dedications of land for certain purposes, whether it be an easement, a road, or traffic control devices, et cetera. But it effectively is just a boundary map of the property, a legal boundary of where your land lies. Previously, this was not a platted land, so it was described in meets and bounds, and so it would rely on the U.S. surveys system to define where it's located. This is now actually creating its own map, so it's self-defining at this point, the boundaries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just more images of the layout of the lots, the blocks, et cetera. We have connections to other exterior parcels, so continuing that road network. And in Phase 1, 193 lots, and in Phase 2, 157 lots. Here, I'm just highlighting where we're at in the development review process. So we're at preliminary plat. Next would be construction plans for the residential phase, and then ultimately final plat. And then once the final plat's been approved, recorded, then they can start pulling building permits. So right now, we're working towards the horizontal improvements on the site. Once those are complete or in final form, then they can start pulling building permits and going vertical with the construction. And staff does find the request consistent with the comprehensive plan, land development regulations, and the plan development ordinance. We are recommending a motion to recommend adoption of the resolution. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you, John Paul. Questions for John Paul?
Is this at a point, because I'm new, so excuse me for not knowing, but do they have like lot sizes figured out yet, or is that coming later?
Yeah, so you can't see it here. It's a variety of lot sizes, depending on some of the pie-shaped ones. They extend out to about 70. A majority of them are between the 40 and 50 range for like mid-block lots.
Name.
I'm sorry, Ms. Porter.
And then, maybe this was discussed during the commercial part, but is there any plans for traffic signals and stuff with this coming and Publix coming and all of that on 26?
That is the crux of why the construction plans for the commercial is not here yet. We've had several meetings with all the interested parties to come to a head on design for the intersection, and all that's being wrapped up into a transportation impact analysis. We've got conditions ready for them to be presented so we can at least move forward with the construction plan so they can start moving some dirt out there. But signal is, yes, that's one thing we're trying to pin down, the appropriate timing of the signal at this time.
My question would be more for the applicant and the design of the roads inside, so I'll let him present and then we can discuss.
I don't think he has a presentation.
So no presentation?
He's just here to
No
answer
presentation.
questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So come on down and.
So looking at this plat and seeing how other residentials have done it, and with all respect to the developer being more commercial subject matter expert versus resident, my concern is the big straightaways on these plats that are going through possible two-way stops. Has the applicant considered possibly working with the engineers to work on like a traffic calming? Because if you're looking at the entrance from the commercial way all the way down, other than a couple two-way stop signs preventing, doesn't matter if you put a speed limit of 20 miles an hour, no one's really going to obey that. So we've known that traffic calming, whether it be a roundabout, doing four-way stops, it's just going to prevent further headaches in that residential area of, people, I don't see them cutting through, but speeding through the neighborhoods. We've had issues with the subdivision behind Cannonberry with the straightaways back there. So I'm just trying to get ahead of my big thing about the city is being proactive versus reactive. I would hate to see something like this get approved, then all of a sudden 5 years, 6 years down the road, their residents are screaming at us, how did we approve this? Why didn't you put a traffic calming in there? And I'm just seeing a lot of roadway without any kind of traffic calming scenarios here. So, and I understand this is preliminary, but I just want to make sure that this is being discussed.
No, great questions, great insights, and yeah, I'm sure the residents of Newberry Oaks appreciate your vigilance on this. And that is something that we'll be looking at, and it's something that we discussed during the land use and zoning phases as well. There are certain obligations they agreed to do. Anything that's greater than 500 feet, they have to introduce some sort of traffic calming design element. There are a few that are offered, but that level of design won't really be presented to staff or the board until we get to the construction plans. At this stage, we're looking at boundaries of the limits of the land that's being defined, as well as the lots, and then the areas that are designated for the roads, but we're not seeing anything that's designed inside those roads. We just know the exterior limits of how wide those roads are going to be. So when the construction plans come in, that's where we'll be commenting on introducing, just as an example, on-street parking and alternating that, or, doing the traffic circles or doing a roundabout to slow down or break up the ability for a vehicle or a person driving a vehicle to speed up to an unreasonable speed in a neighborhood. So those will be introduced. They're not there yet. The expectation that they will be adhering to the obligation is pretty clear. And they didn't contest any of the traffic calming techniques that we recommended, and they accepted in the rezoning development order. So we expect those to be presented to the board once the construction plans come through.
And then my second, more so, is these roads going to be deeded over to the city once they're completed? Are they going to be privatized like Oakview Village is privatized and basically belong to the HOA? Is the plan here, once this is done, these roads will be considered public roads versus private roads?
Great question. So there are roads here that do connect and continue that city network. So there are roads that are clearly should be city roads, city maintained and cleared. As it's been the pattern of the city to accept most roads that are in these planned developments for maintenance obligation. There haven't been any discussions about not accepting the certain roads within the planned development for maintenance by the city. And a lot of the roads do carry that network to future through roads that will also connect. And so having a continuity and maintenance obligation is something that the city probably seeks. So one segment of road is not different from another segment of road, that they're all being maintained to the same level of service. So the expectation to be able to travel on a road and not spill your coffee in your lap is adhered to.
So that brings me to my other question when you were talking about connecting to future roads. I do see here on the plat that there's future connections. And then as I'm looking on the map itself, the future connection, I mean, right now it's just really all ag just south of that. So as far as future connection, does the city have any plans to make a road back there that will connect to, I would say 235 or 242nd, that will cut straight across? You see where phase 4 is right there? Yep. Go back. Keep going. Yeah, so you see how on the bottom of the right angle, you would call it, there's right there all the way at the point, the road ends and there's fine print that says future connection. Is there plans for the city to develop any kind of roadway in there to alleviate like maybe even the traffic in that area to take a back route.
To the best of my knowledge, there's no plan to construct a road to connect. Are you looking to connect to 15th?
Either the 15th is too far to connect to 15th.
Mm-hmm.
According to Google Maps, I mean, you're looking at,
It will eventually do.
I mean, I would say eventually, but at the moment, it backs up straight into, like, ag. I would just say it's ag at the moment.
So as the developments come in, they'll be requested or required to connect to these future through street connections that we're laying out now. So the city, I don't believe, is intending on constructing these roads or manufacturing these roads in advance, especially because it's private property, and so there'd have to be some sort of acquisition of that land. It'd have to make itself into the capital improvement plan, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is not in the works at the moment. So that is not what we're planning to do, is complete the road network. As developments do come in, though, they will be connecting to these future through street connections to provide some sort of alternate means of traveling in the city, except for State Road 26 or US 2741.
Okay.
And for a connection to 242 or Dock Corrales, there is a connection planned,
Okay.
and that's part of Phase 1.
So then my other concern, and arborists are probably going to love me for this one, but I'm noticing it's going to be a whole set of track housing without any kind of green space other than stormwater retention. I kind of see this is just packing in as much as possible. I do appreciate the commercial space that they're putting in, but I do feel that the percentage that we're asking for of greenery is being fully used in the stormwater, and then pushing everything as much as possible together, which to me, I feel like should be spaced out a little bit more, the green space. Me being, from what I hear from other Newberry residents, talking about what they would like to see, when a new neighborhood comes in. They would like to see maybe, if it's going to be tract homes, but, with some greenery, other than they're going by what's required as far as green space, but just slamming it into the stormwater retention area, and that's green space. And we don't see it as green space. We just see it as, okay, you're using it as stormwater.
It's not utilized, you can't utilize
Right.
it as
Because
people to play in or.
this area, yes, even though it is a lot of open space right now, there are a lot of protected, I would put money on it, that there are some protected trees in there that, would need to stay. Listen, when Publix came in, we got all excited that Publix was coming in, and then I had to hear for weeks on end about how many trees we killed. Yeah, so I can only hear, and that was for a Publix that we wanted to be here. And I had to tell people, like, bro, you asked for a Publix, you got a Publix. But here, you're gonna put a bunch of tract homes, which, listen, what people do on their private property is what they do. However, it's gonna be a hard defense when there's a lot of trees on this property that are about to be demolished. And if we got a lot of flack for Publix, I can only imagine what we're gonna get on this one. So I just want to reiterate, maybe considering a little bit more deeper green space, more protected of the trees in the area, to do our diligence to make sure that we're trying to make our citizens heard as well as happy as much as possible. Granted, I understand they need to make money and it's their property, but if we can find some common ground here.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's very thoughtful of your constituents that are looking to preserve more of the trees, and that is something that we would look to do. Once we get the construction plans in, they'll come with a tree disposition plan. At that time, we'll be able to identify those trees that qualify as a regulated tree. That would be any tree over 12 inches at diameter breast height, and we can isolate those, and then we would be able to implement the sections of code that we have for our trees, which is in Chapter 74 about preserving or giving credits for trees being preserved. The overall development does meet the minimum standards that we have established in the code, which is at least 15% of the site needs to be set aside for open space, up to 50% of that, so 7.5% of the site can be dedicated to stormwater. Unfortunately, because of stormwater requirements, it tends to be a little bit more than 7.5% of the site. And you can see large swaths of the site are actually just dedicated for retention basins, but scattered throughout the neighborhood. And we'll probably be able to get a better picture of this once we have the tree disposition plan and able to overlay these two, so you can see which trees are being reserved, regulated, or being removed, and credits being applied to them. But you'll be able to see where those trees are actually, going to land. That is something that we'll champion through the review of the construction plans, and we'll have a transparency in the report as to what was saved and what was gotten rid of.
I had a question. So you've got the neighborhood streets, and there's an A and a B, which I could not figure out the difference between those two things, and I stared at them for a while and even tried to read the little tiny numbers. I can't figure that out, but is the plan, or are we not there yet, to consistently have, like, I see there's, trees along the road. It looks like there might be some sidewalks. Is that all?
That's conceptual. I would not take that as a final answer. Again, construction plans are going to be where those are laid out. The code requires only sidewalks on one side of the road. We're asking for them to put them at least through the spine road on both sides of the road. I believe that's the design and the construction plans for the non-residential portion closest to State Road 26, and to carry that throughout the rest of the, at least the spine road. Where you are on an individual local road that only connects to that central collector, may just be a sidewalk on one side of the road. Is it the board's wish that they be on both sides of the road?
I mean, living in a neighborhood where they are only on one side of the road, that would be really nice.
To have it on both sides?
To have it on both sides, and definitely, like, in my neighborhood specifically, there's not enough trees, so there's not really a whole lot of tree cover, and then there's, like, not sidewalks everywhere. And
Yeah.
so you're, like, maybe in the street, and it's, like, hot pavement, and it's just not as pleasant. I work, unfortunately, in, like, the epitome of pleasant walking space in Hale, and so, like, that is beautiful to me. And back behind Tioga, like, it's a nice walking area. There's lots of natural tree coverage. They left a lot of the trees there. And I wish we could see more of that in development in general. But I just see them come in and they wipe every tree down. They leave nothing.
Right.
And it's really, like, kind of sad when there's other areas that are absolutely beautiful and enjoyable to the people that are living there.
What's the name of the development?
It's now known as Highland Park.
Okay.
Other board questions?
I had a question. That existing house, did we previously discuss that being a historic home? What were we going to do with that location?
I think it's been sold or is in the act of being sold.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have anything to add on the Gray residence on the property? So it's been parsed out. It's not included in the plat, as you can see here. The dark line being the boundary of the plat. So it is outside of it's within the plan development, so it does count as a contributing structure to the overall plat, but it's not included in the areas to be developed. I understand it is under contract for a sale, so.
Other board questions?
It's not being demolished. I just want to, that's what we
I have a
understand
question for
currently.
Ryan, if you,
Yes.
so do you know the impetus between the 7 phases and the 2 down to the 2? And can you put the number of lots back up on the screen for each phase?
Mr. Mayor, Ryan Thompson with CHW agent for the applicant, standing in for Travis Hasty, PE. My understanding is our client, Gromax, is a commercial developer. They initially thought that a reasonable number of units per phase was 50 homes, which brought us to the 7 phases. They've since found a developer, or maybe more than one, for the residential portion, and it was their direction then to create 2 phases. So that's the extent of my knowledge.
Okay, and my concern with the 2 phases is, Newberry really, the most houses we've built in a year is like 220, and that was putting an awful strain on our staff. So part of the idea of kind of phasing out to everybody is, everybody gets a fair shot at building some houses, but we don't nix anybody else out by saying, well, I'm a national developer and I can come in and eat up 193 of your permits because I can build them all in 1 year. And that gives us the time to absorb it for the infrastructure and kind of all of those things. So I would be concerned about going down to 2 phases for that reason. I think there's certainly some wiggle room in there. But what and John Paul may be able to tell us of another way that we can kind of have a mechanism by which to keep those conversations going so that no one person is building faster than what our staff can handle, what our infrastructure can handle. And then my only other question is back to John Paul, so I appreciate that answer.
Yes,
John, can you tell us where we're at in the comprehensive plan? Because a lot of what I've heard from the P&Z tonight, I think we're addressing sidewalks on both sides of the road, a percentage of green space that you can count in the stormwater and a percentage that you can't. And I'm just not right now entirely clear. Have we passed those things in the comp plan? Are they in the works? Is this part grandfathered in and exempted from those changes? Where are we at?
So any application that's received can benefit from the rules under which they apply. So say I apply today and, the rule says that I only need 15% and the city's contemplating 30% as a minimum requirement, I get the benefit from the 15%.
So the comp plan has not worked its way all the way through. We're still in the process.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So we're doing an overhaul to the future land, all elements of our comprehensive plan, and that's still in, we just left a meeting on the future land use element. We'll be getting into a few of the other ones. That level of detail is more appropriate for the land development regulations, though, and the comprehensive plan is goals, objectives, and policies that will echo what was discussed during the charrettes that were held by CHW, as well as the strategic plan that the city adopted in 2022.
So if there were 7 phases and we move forward now, they'd move forward under the old rules. But if we get the comp plan done by the time they bring another phase, or do all phases get grandfathered in when they, because part of, and with other developments, we've talked about the benefit of phasing is we all get to kind of see how the world is evolving and come back. Is that true when it comes to that level of detail, or is that level of detail established in this moment?
And I'm going to ask a city attorney to correct me if I misspeak, but because this is getting into precedence law, which I don't have a lot of experience in. When you apply and you're contemplating a rule, that is when that rule will be of, I guess, scrutiny or of effect. And so we were looking at, for this particular project, the open space requirement during the land use and zoning phase. And so that's when they've satisfied that obligation of the law to meet at least 15%. And so at that time, if we change it tomorrow to 30%, they still only need to provide the 15%, which we approved back in August of last year.
And the buffer around the existing to the west, is that buffer, because the diagram looks like that buffer has been eaten up.
It's there, it's very small, and I'll show you on the plan.
What is the buffer? What's the footage down to?
That's probably the minimum 10-foot perimeter around the entire property.
I thought we had agreed because there was, am I got this right? That's where the nursery is? And there's
that's
fumes.
Tanglewood.
That's the other side.
That's a little bit further east.
All right.
Yep. Same crew though.
Same crew.
CHW and yeah.
Okay. All right, back to the board. Anybody have any other questions?
I just want to iterate to the board that we'll report back to you. So construction plans only go to the city commission. We'll have an information item for the planning and zoning board on the sidewalks and the tree disposition. We'll ask the applicant to provide some sort of overlay for the trees so you can see the lots and where the trees are being saved, et cetera, to just bring that back before the city commission actually considers the construction plans. But city commission is the final approver on the approval body on the construction plan. So,
it would be helpful, I know the number of lots and the density is the same as what we talked about before, but any other thing that has changed, if there could just be a slide or something in the back material that has, these things are different than what, that way we know this was what was approved, this is what's been changed. In my opinion, the phasing is kind of important because that gives us some time. If you say that somebody they've got 193 lots in phase one, then it's up to them, at that point.
Would the method of presentation work for you, the visuals with what was approved?
That would be good, yeah.
That's way better.
Yeah.
Like those two, so you can see that.
That way you can see it. And I just do good with like a bullet list so I can read,
Okay. We'll do both.
But the phasing one I got, but anything else that's different, changed, would be helpful. So we need a motion to recommend to move forward. We heard a lot of things tonight that are in the comp plan that are maybe not applicable. I think that you could, thank you, darling, if you could just leave those keys on the table, I appreciate it. You could certainly express those concerns, but I wouldn't put them in the motion. I would say these are things that we'd want you to look at. Or if there's something in there that's a deal breaker for you, then you can certainly, we can hash that out tonight too.
I mean, other than the fact that the road situation and all that stuff is something that we talk about further down the road.
Right, so just to be clear, this isn't the first or the last
Right,
time
this
we're
isn't gonna be
going
the first
to come
hearing.
across and discuss the things like the safety on the roads or the trees or both sidewalks, on either side. So is this going to come back for us, or that's going to just get passed over to the city commission to consider?
So this is for the residential portion, this is the last time that the planning and zoning board will see this. Everything else will be handled by the city commission, so.
And I'm not sure that the commission can require sidewalks at this point either. If the application came in before that requirement, it could be something that we could talk about as an ask, but I'm not sure it could be mandated. That's why I think you should, and my only recommendation of keeping out, these are our concerns out of the motion, is the motion can problematize things, right? But conveying to the commission that, hey, we really want to see X, Y, and Z. We want to see more trees. We want to see a bigger buffer. We don't want to see all the green space.
Traffic calming.
Right. Yeah. And I think the traffic calming will come. I don't know that it will come back to the P&Z, but that will be at a later date when you say, okay, how do we narrow that up?
But I want to make sure that's something that's being discussed in the commission, and if it's not going to be met back in the P&Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern, is just some of the stuff that we're not going to be able to, that they're not going to come back at. I don't mind recommending a motion to move forward as long as the commission has our notes per se on what we discussed and what we would like to have them review further. I would be more inclined and more okay moving along. I understand that that's not something that we will technically vote on, or I don't want to add it to the motion and create more of a confusion. But something I think they need to just be aware of.
List of concerns.
This list of concerns, the trees, the traffic calming. I think traffic calming is one of the biggest things.
Phases.
The phases and the sidewalks.
I would actually suggest putting something in the phases in the motion, because that, in my mind, everything else we've talked about is going to have a different stop, a different,
Right.
But saying that, because I have a concern of giving someone a blank check to move forward to the 193 right off the bat.
Right.
I'm extremely.
There are other things that we could do to say we just can't handle that right now. Our staff can't handle it, but we've kind of held that bar of sort of a 50 number for everybody, and I think that's we need to be in that range. So I think Ryan wanted to make another comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some clarification on the roads. So they will all be publicly dedicated roadways.
Right.
The connections are intended for expansion, and as John Paul mentioned, it will be on the future developers that develop those properties to provide the infrastructure as this developer is required to provide the infrastructure. The idea of there's two different cross sections. One is for that main thoroughfare that you see coming from the center of the property at Newberry Road. It's intended as the previous PD that you saw that included the Graverly property connected directly to 15th Avenue. That is intended to serve the city at large as an opportunity for alternate routes. That is an 80-foot right-of-way. And you'll also note on our design plat that we do, to the greatest extent that we can, we don't face lots on that roadway. So they're all side roads for those lots. In the PD, we did include traffic calming requirements that we will adhere to, and we are planning, which I believe is consistent with the roadway cross sections, to include sidewalks on both sides of the road throughout the development.
Okay.
So hopefully that hits on a lot of your concerns. We did look at trees, and the top half, if you notice, of the subdivision is kind of at an angle. That did lend to an opportunity to add some trees, but as you all have discussed in detail, you'll see, to what extent in the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. Sean Paul, will you put the recommended motion on the... Okay, so recommended motion would be to adopt resolution 2024-17 with direction to staff to revisit the issue of the phases and to compile a list of the concerns here today and to pass along. Does that encompass everything? So direction to staff to go back and reconsider the number of phases and to compile a list of the concerns that they've heard here today.
Yep.
Everybody good with that? Okay. Do I have that motion?
So we can't require them to change the date. We can only recommend it.
Well, we're recommending to the commission. The commission can say the 2 phases isn't going to work for us. So that would be, we're recommending that you guys, and I think that what ideally would happen is that our staff would get back with the developer and say, guys, the 2 phases thing probably isn't going to, let's see what we can do. Is there a compromise in between 2 and 7?
I mean, bottom line, to Ms. Parker's point, so what we do is we ultimately recommend our concerns. I mean, we can't force the hand of the developer. The commission's the only one really, and even then, they're still legally required to do certain things. So, I mean, I would highly suggest that we, if the motion continues, that we go with what we've noted and just strongly encourage the commission to take those notes into consideration. Because as the advisory board and someone that's sat here for a couple years knows that our commission does listen to what we have to say. We do a pretty decent job of vetting a lot of the homework for them. So even though we can't force them to do anything, our recommendation does hold weight, at least with the current board. So I'm confident in our notes saying, hey, we want you to look at this, and they'll take it to heart.
Okay. Anybody want to make the motion? Anybody want to make a different motion?
What would be the motion?
Motion is to recommend the adoption of resolution 2024-17 with direction to staff to sit down with the applicant and have another conversation about the number of phases and give the commission a list of concerns.
That's a lot of wording, Madam Attorney. Can I just say so moved?
So I have a motion from Board Member Urchin. I got a second from Board Member Long. Any comments, questions on the floor for the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Any new topics for members' discussion? We got the pet pageant, which is going to be a knockout this year at the May 18th Watermelon Festival parade at 10:30 in the morning. Anything?
Everyone be there with their pets at 10, though, please.
At the festival, not at the parade.
The parade at 10.
Oh, you want to be in the parade? In the parade at 10.
Pets
We'll
are
line
in
up
the
for that.
parade. Come hang
Wonderful.
out at 10. If you don't get the form, I will have forms on site, so
All right.
don't be shy.
Okay, any other comments?
Since this is a P&Z and probably more people are listening to this one, I want to congratulate the opioid task force on their achievement of receiving a $200,000 grant. We started off as a small group of concerned citizens that came to the city of Newberry asking to create an opioid task force. And, lucky us, we all started right before COVID decided to take flight in 2020. So we were, a little delayed. We still strived. We still continue to push forward. And we are now fully funded with that grant. So we are working diligently to continue to spread the awareness. And it's good to put Newberry on the map for something positive in this big epidemic of the opioid crisis that we're in. So big congratulations to the opioid task force. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for helping that, and our commission for entrusting the opioid task force to do what they do to continue to spread the awareness.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You guys have been amazing. No limit to what a small group of folks can do when they put their heads together to accomplish it. Okay, any public comment? Hearing none, we are adjourned.